So next, I know many of you are excited to hear from Keith. Our next speaker is an American entrepreneur and a recognized global thought leader in the relational and collaborative sciences. As chairman of Ferrazzi Greenlight and its research institute, he works to identify behaviors that block global organizations from reaching their goals and helps to transform them by coaching new behaviors that increase growth and shareholder value. Keith has introduced a new transformational operating system he calls co-elevation that leads to exponential change and value. Keith was formerly the CMO of Deloitte and Starwood Hotels. He is a #1 New York Times best-selling author of Who's Got Your Back and Never Eat Alone, and his newest book, Leading Without Authority, as well as a frequent contributor to Harvard Business Review, the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, Forbes, Fortune, and many other publications. His 20-year history of transforming C-suite executive teams has made him an agent of transformation among the world's greatest and most sought-after coaches. I'm excited to introduce to you all Keith Ferrazzi, who will be discussing how we shouldn't go back to work, but instead go forward. And my partner in crime, Mr. Eric Huberman, will be joining us as well. Keith, good to see you. How are you, man?
Tony, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to spending some time with your folks and getting interrogated by Eric and you afterward, right?
That's right. That I can only imagine that he is excited as you are.
Fierce. Okay. Well, let me dive in. I want to spend about 20, 25 minutes just chatting with the crew. And then let's go into Q&A. And I would highly advise everybody to be using the chat function and question function to be asking things along the way. It makes the whole engagement a lot more fun, and you can talk to each other too. Look, one of the things that has really come to roost for me personally is this critical inflection point is really opening up a great opportunity for so many people. You know, as we all know, there are going to be significant fortunes lost in this period of time, but there are significant fortunes gained at this period of time as well. I'd rather be on the better side of that balance sheet, as I know everybody here would be as well. I started an initiative in April where I started hearing my clients, companies like General Motors, Verizon, Delta Airlines, et cetera, individuals within the organization asking the question, what will it be like when we go back to work? And that it unnerved me a bit in that I saw this as such a crucial and possible inflection point. I don't want to slip back into old work ways that fundamentally weren't serving us in the past anyway. I just came out with a book, came out in March with a book called Leading Without Authority. And what I describe in this book is how organizations have needed for almost 10 years now to radically accelerate the level of collaboration that we as leaders are extracting from our teams. It's one thing to be a leader of individuals. It's another thing to be a leader that's capable of creating what I call a co-elevating team, a team that won't let each other fail, a team that's showing up and 20% of their mind is focused on each other's success, a team that has brash, candid capability of giving each other feedback, but having that received not with defensiveness, but having that be received in a way that's appreciated because it's elevating all of us. Co-elevation, going higher together, a shared commitment to a strong mission, but also committed to helping each other get there. And I have been coaching this, and my organization has been coaching this, and we've been creating courses and tutorials about how do you extract this kind of leadership in organizations for years now. And I felt that this period of time was such an extraordinary time to bring that to roost and make sure that we use this as an inflection point to solidify it. So what I want to do is I want to give you really simple, 3 simple steps as an entrepreneur, as a leader of an organization, or even as any individual wanting to be a change agent at this point in time. I want to give you 3 simple steps and give you some practices that I think can help bring that to bear in this conversation in the next 20 minutes or so that we have. Okay, step number one, well, actually, I'll even say it as a precedent to my 3 steps. I want you to stop thinking about digging out of a hole or trying to meet last year's revenue projections, et cetera. And I want you to ask the question, what does 10X look like? What does 5 years from now look like for our business? And instead of inching out of this pandemic and moving through the next 18 months to try to get some sense of normalcy. I mean, that's a whole mindset, set of practices associated with getting back to normalcy. I want you to think differently. I want you to ask yourself, where in the heck might you be in 5 years if you really skate to where the puck's going, thinking about where technology is disrupting, thinking about what different work models there are, hiring of gig workers, although we're in California and that has its challenges associated with W-2, et cetera. But my point is not necessarily thinking that everybody is a full-time equivalent at all times in the work that we do. Just rethinking, and also rethinking, what have we learned about sales and marketing during these 5 months, and how do we accelerate intimacy without having to jump on an airplane and generate loyalty and connection? I was talking to a CEO of a company the other day that serves Procter and Gamble, and they said that they used to have big meetings twice a year with P&G, but now they're having hour meetings every week, and they have accelerated the cycle time of new products in development with Procter and Gamble by 3x over this period of time. So I want you to take all of these areas, and this is the research we're doing at a website called Go Forward to Work, goforwardtowork.com. We're picking apart sales and marketing, strategy, digital disruption, remote work, what's been happening that we want to really think about. How do we go 10x, not slipping back into old ways? So that's a precedent to my 3 tips. Once you have a fuzzy vision for what that looks like, I mean, for instance, I give you use myself as a case study. I run a coaching firm, right? That's what I do. We coach executive teams through transformation. I've traditionally coached the largest and most prestigious key teams in the world through them rethinking how they're moving to the next level. Delta Airlines reinventing the travel industry. General Motors coming out of bankruptcy, but now General Motors reinventing itself, so it's highly competitive against all of the onslaught of new automotive manufacturers like Tesla and all coming on board. So, but now, since this has all occurred, I decided to create a middle market business and an online courses business and an online community of executives serving each other through this kind of transformation. I didn't have those businesses before. I've been meeting with individuals rethinking what is the future of technology in coaching? How does AI meet a Zoom meeting? And how does that actually help a team be more effective? I've been working with Zoom itself. I've been working with Microsoft Teams and others. So I'm telling you how I'm thinking about rebooting my business and rebooting myself. I don't know what the answer is for you, but you can have this fuzzy vision of what it looks like. That's step 1. Step 2, who's your team? Who's your team to achieve that? What I mean by that is, who are the individuals that are going to be with you to co-create a solution to this vision that you have? And the answer is, it's not the people that report to you. Yes, they're a part of it, but that's not it. I immediately reached out to a friend of mine, Peter Diamandis, here in Los Angeles, who's sort of the king of 10X thinking, the king of exponential thinking and abundance. And I reached out to Peter and I said, Peter, I really could use some help. Could you help me think through this strategy? Let's have a series of meetings about it. He's like, absolutely. And by the way, thanks for reaching out. I've got this new company. This is this extraordinary vaccine company that's using unique technology against the COVID virus. I'd love you to be a board of advisors on that. So now all of a sudden, the two of us have joined each other's teams. If you think about this universe of those who are sitting here watching this, you have individuals here in Los Angeles running organizations similar to yours or in related spaces who can be on your team, individuals who would add and contribute. So, I know Eric at Hawke. I'm a very proud client of theirs and love the work, and I know him personally, know his team. I've coached his team. And, I would say folks like him and need to be you know, on each other's team, just like he and I have become, Eric and I have become on each other's team, both in terms of what I can give to him and what he can advise to me. So I want you to really, I call it teaming out. I want you to think very broadly about who's on your team. When I created an info products company in March, then I reached out to a guy named Vishen, who runs a company called Mind Valley. And the two of us have been partnering with each other. And in that period of time, I've launched 2 courses for him. They're called Quest courses. And he's helped guide me through my own course launches and how do I serve my clients in an info products category and space. So again, I would have never been able to hire these people. They don't work for me, but they're integral parts of my team. So that's step number 1. Who's your team? The second step you have to ask is, how do you co-create with that group? How do you co-create with that group? The first person you invite into your team, you're inviting them into their team. Explain what I mean by that. It's not enough to invite people into your meetings and have you preside. These meetings, these engagements, to get somebody to be on your team, they've got to see the radical benefit for them. The learning experience, the quid pro quo, the opportunity to go 10x themselves. That is so critical to you blowing it off with blowing it out of the park with these guys, because what needs to occur is you want them all in, and they're going to be all in if you're all in for them. And there's this process that I call in the book Leading Without Authority. I take you through a series of steps. First step is, who's your team? And then another step is, how do you earn permission to lead? And I call it serve, share, and care. Service. How do you lead? By inviting somebody in ways that they're going to see radical benefit for them, right? How do you create currency for those individuals? Eric's got a book coming out. I want to be of service to that. He's got his team, and I wanted to be of service to that. He's helping me rethink my e-commerce and my digital strategy, which, by the way, is just a mess right now. I'm just early on beginning to think about this. And one of the reasons I'm here is I'm actually reaching out to you all and saying, how can I, as a thought leader that has traditionally served large market, begin to serve the middle market, right? What kind of content strategy, email strategies, all of those things I'm deeply curious about, could use your services. I showed up here to put myself out to you and say, I'm looking for new team members all the time, right? And I would be welcome to be your team member as well. So that's the idea. I want you to put yourself out there in all formats, inviting people to co-create with you, And now the great thing about being remote and virtual is your team members can be anywhere in the world. One of my closest and dearest team members is a guy named Jim Quick. He's been in this info product space for a very long time, and he's in New York City. It doesn't matter. I'm a coach to him. He's a coach to me. We're really best friends. And frankly, this whole idea of teaming out and working and co-creating together has ended up being an extraordinary opportunity for us to solidify the care and the intimacy and the connection and the vulnerability we have as humans to each other. So learn, serve, share openly, care. All of these things embolden you to lean in and to co-create with people. Now, in a remote environment, not only is it possible, but in a remote environment, it's easier. I just hosted a meeting the other day for a team of 50 people. And normally you couldn't get crap done in a team of 50 people, particularly in a physical environment. But here we are in a remote environment. We had 50 people. It was this particular company. It was an all hands. It was a small firm. It was all hands for this particular company. But then they had invited vendors in, and they invited partners in, and they invited thought leaders in. And it was a big group. And we asked some critical questions around their future. And in the snap of a finger, they went into breakout rooms. This is one of the greatest assets of being in remote, is to be able to go into small breakout rooms. I think one of the questions, they had a strategy for expansion in their business that they put to the group. And then they said to the group, what are the risks we're not seeing? And everybody went into small breakout rooms. And in breakout rooms of 3, I highly suggest, it's It's enough in a short period of time that everybody gets heard, but there's enough of a camaraderie and a sense of community that 3 people is a really good, it's a good space for squeezing all the inside out of folks. So they went into small groups of 3. They had Google Docs in there that were open for every group. And they started hammering it out and talking about it. All that information came back, right? And then the leader said, this is amazing. I'm not going to reflect on it right now other than to say thank you. I'd like to be able to send to you a video after I've accumulated and consumed all of this and analyzed it, tell you what I'm going to do different. Within 24 hours, he did. And it was such an extraordinary, and they launched 3 new initiatives, such an extraordinary engaged way to work with each other. The third thing that I want to talk to you a little bit about is, so the second was being co-creative, really being co-creative, using breakout rooms, creating psychological safety. When we coach a team, there are 8 things we're coaching a team around. One of them is how do you extract the greatest degree of innovation and collaboration among the team, broadly speaking, right? I call it teaming out and then collaboration. But underneath that, you've got to build the psychological safety. You've got to build the relationships. You've got to build the sense of energy. You've got to build the sense of celebration, of gratitude. And you're coaching to those things. One of the things I highly recommend all of you do at the beginning of meetings is a short check-in. What's going on in your lives personally and professionally? What's going on in your lives personally and professionally? Everybody can go around. It's a small enough meeting and do that. Or you go to breakout rooms. Go to breakout rooms. What's going on in your lives personally and professionally? And in groups of 5, have the discussion come back. It just changes the tune of the whole room, changes the intimacy, changes the connectivity, changes the risk-taking, changes the mechanism of this group to really give a damn about each other, right? So that's a good practice to heat up the room in advance. Again, all these things you can do so much easier in a remote environment. And people say that the remote environment isn't a bonding environment. Bullshit. It's not a bonding environment if all you're doing is running transactional Zoom calls that bore the hell out of people for an hour and a half. So, make sure your meetings are 15-minute increments before you do something different, throw out a poll, et cetera. Make sure that your meetings are using breakout rooms, et cetera. So all of this is, number 1, who's your team? So I guess number 1 is really be transformational. But that's the starting point. Number 1 is who's your team. Number 2 is really co-create, put the critical questions on the table and incrementally work on those questions together as a team. And the third is be agile. You all know what agile is. And agile as a program management device for literally coding is one thing. But are you running agile at the executive team? Most are not. So I want you to run agile at the executive team. One of the great CPSs, collaborative problem solving discussions, you could ask in that early breakout discussion is, what are the big hills we have to take to be successful, to really break through, to be 10X? What are those big hills? Okay, well, then the group goes into small breakout rooms, talks about what the big hills are, right? Comes back. Now you put those big hills, once you've chosen them as the CEO or the executive, or the team can prioritize them. Once you land on the big hills, now let's go on some weekly sprints, monthly sprints around them, depending upon the velocity of work that gets done. Would be if it's a 2-week sprint, a 1-week sprint. Heck, when we first started working at Delta, the sprints were quarterly. And we're talking about reinventing the travel industry with that company. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic hits, their sprints went to daily. So you can decide where, how frequently the sprint reports and the stand-ups are. But the point is that I want you to begin to adopt agile at the executive team level, because that allows you, why? It allows you the micro pivots. It allows you to renegotiate the direction you're heading, making sure that you're staying on track the entire time. Now, all of these I call recontracting. All of these I call recontracting, meaning the way you work with your team needs to be recontracted. I don't believe, in fact, I know for a fact, most teams are pretty shitty. 70% of teams say that they can't speak up openly in the room, right? And that doesn't make you a bad leader. It just means that you haven't been able to create the kind of psychological safety that makes people resist their fears and concerns about groups and authority and all of those things. Bullshit. Leading without authority. The key is to invite your people to step up and meet you in your leadership, to hold each other accountable, to give each other energy. All of these 8 elements that we need to recontract need to be driven into the fabric of the team. The team needs to own each other's success, not just you own everybody's success. Stop playing whack-a-mole, running around, trying to make everybody successful. You need to make the team responsible for each other. That's so important. So important to move from that old hierarchical authority to a new way of working, which is a way of working around co-elevation, going higher together, commitment for the team to coach each other. And there's lots of other practices. So what I want to give to you is a recontracting guide, which goes through these 8 areas of a high-performing team in a remote world, gives you the script that you need to be able to talk to your team about where you're strong and where you're weak, then allows you, and I actually give you a video in there that allows you the ability to hear from me about how you would coach your team into moving in that direction, right? How do you become this kind of a co-elevating coach? So if you go to keithferrazzi.com/live, you can get that recontracting guide. And of course, if you're interested in any of our info products that help you in that regard, all the more power to you. But I think this would really get you started in the way that you need to go. The real critical piece for you, and as Eric is going to be coming on board to give me a little bit of some Q&A on your behalf, is don't let this pandemic go to waste. I mean, it's a horrible, it is a horrible crisis in the world, economically, socially, interpersonally, personally, so much loss. But this is an opportunity for you to make sure that you're not swept in the tide, but you are actually taking control, looking ahead. So many organizations are inching out of this over the next 18 months. I want you to leapfrog 5 years in advance. I want your team to redefine who you are today. I don't know about you, but even though things are hectic as heck, they're better than they were before when I was jumping on airplanes and doing the kind of stuff I was doing all over the place. I've had the time to be a CEO. I've had the time to be a change agent. I've had the time to start 2 new businesses and a research institute. My research institute, Go Forward to Work, tons of stuff there that I think could advantage you around remote work and other things. And then I've started these other businesses, middle markets business and info products business. I did all of this in the last months. And by the way, there's been some pivots, some worked, some didn't. As I told you, I'm still struggling with middle market lead generation and how to use really great content marketing. But I would love for your insights on that. And I would love for you to reach out to me and say, I can help. And I would love to be of service to you. So, that's the whole idea of teaming out. Here we are in Los Angeles, and we all have the opportunity to serve each other. And I would love to be of service to you. And I know I need a lot of help from folks on this line that are watching this. So when you reach out to us, make sure you let us know that you're interested in joining the movement. Hello, Eric.
How you doing, bud?
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. That was awesome.
Thank you. Did you have any doubt? You invited me here, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Good to see you.
You too. So I do have a couple questions for you on this. You're involved with a ton of businesses, so you're seeing, like, because of the coaching position you're in, you're giving great advice here. But who have you seen that has surprised you, that has done really interesting things throughout all this, and like whether it's now and going back to work, or whether it's just through the whole process from kind of the agile side of what you were talking about?
Delta Airlines, extraordinary. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it felt like to you when you got that March slap in the head with a 2x4 in terms of revenue, right? We all got it. Delta Airlines got a 90% reduction in revenue, somewhere close to that. I don't know what they reported, and all they did was focused on building a better company out of that from the very beginning. They maintained the strength of their relationships. Their culture was retained strong. They'd taken everything that we had been working on with them around co-elevation. They merged that right into moving from quarterly sprints to daily sprints, the commitment to using these tools of collaborative problem solving, something I didn't talk to the team about, which we call bulletproofing, which is another, you'll read about it in the recontracting guide. All of this stuff, just phenomenal, just phenomenal. Such respect for that company.
Same, actually. I mean, I as someone that I was on 17 flights by the end of February, and then I've been on one round trip flight.
Oh yeah.
And that was a Delta flight, and just the way they handled everything, the way they handled the whole process, it's impressive to see that like they just owned it and really,
I will not fly another airline right now. And first of all, I actually have a little insider peek as to the extremes that Delta is going to create safety that other airlines are not. I won't fly any other airlines right now.
Yeah, and I wonder if we can hit them up for sponsorship next year. This seems like a good person to get on this. No, they're great. Another question that we've been actually working through, and I know my partner Tony spoke this morning about working remote too, but you said it too, in terms of engaging people and creating that team, creating that camaraderie while remote. What are some things, I totally agree with you, like the idea of getting on another transactional Zoom call, we're all doing it all the time, and those are necessary as well. But what are the things you think that actually help build that community and that camaraderie and team?
Well, it was interesting. I was so excited when I coached your team, that thing that we did called the remote reboot.
Yeah.
And all of the feedback that came back, despite all the work we were doing to make sure we put critical business issues on the table, we used the breakout rooms for new ideation, we came up with good ideas. But the one thing that everybody reported on when they left was, boy, it was nice to really get to know each other again, right? Yeah. Because we used the personal professional check-in to really solidify that emotional resonance with the team. Now, that may not be a muscle that's used to being exercised, but I hope you're going to maintain that, Eric, in terms of your ongoing cadence with your team. They need to bond, but it's not happening in the hallways. So you're going to have to curate it as a leader.
And so that's my question is, what are some, like, it's one thing with our executive team, like we thankfully before this had a good amount of camaraderie and we're getting together in some ways, but for a much larger team and the entire team, bringing people together, finding ways, and is it something that you just—
I'll give you some. First of all, I believe we did a research project to Go Forward to Work, and we're going to be publishing an article in Fortune on this, where we asked teams what has been the greatest source of the degradation of their energy, and we heard the Zoom gloom kind of ideas.
Yep.
We also heard childcare. We heard the political situation going on in the world. There's so many different things, right? And we broke it all out and we picked each one and we started hearing ideas coming from executives of what they're doing. So I heard some great stuff. I mean, the work itself, using breakout rooms is so powerful to lift energy because you get engagement, right? People aren't just listening and absorbing, they're engaged. So the work itself has to change and how you use the rooms. The next thing is a lot of companies are starting to do no meeting Fridays, or maybe no Zoom meeting Wednesdays. So somewhere in the middle, you get a real break and you can actually get caught up with real work, right? And that that's coming. Another one is don't allow all your meetings to end on the hour or the half hour. Make them all end 5 minutes early. Make that mandatory. That way people have 5 minutes, get up, go to the bathroom, check their kids.
That's a huge thing that I've seen. It's literally clicking X and start. Like you're like, meeting's over, meeting started.
Yeah, that's exhausting, and so that's another one. There's a new president over at Headspace, one of our local companies here in Los Angeles, and her name is Cece. I did a piece about her in my column in Forbes magazine. And she's amazing. And what they're doing at Headspace to also bring the meditative, bring the mindfulness into their meetings is important. And you should take a look at that piece that I did. It's posted on LinkedIn.
To be frank, we cut most soft benefits like kombucha on tap and cold brew and massage Fridays and things that we had for our people instead of doing any layoffs during COVID, any salary cuts, that's where we made sure to get stability. We had enough. And then the one thing we made sure to bring back very quickly was mindfulness activities for our team. That's been something that's I actually pushed back on, and Tony, to his respect, has always been my teacher in creating a culture, and he prioritized that. So that's been great.
Yeah, I'll give you one other one is singles nights, not for dating purposes, but anybody who having dinners once a week or every other week, where anybody in the company who lives alone can have dinner together.
Yep.
Right. I mean, there's lots of people out there who this isolation is really challenging on. There's others who, have way too much company at home in their spouses and their kids, etc. So there's all of these areas doing this sweet and sour at the beginning of meetings. What's going on in your life sweet? What's going on in your life sour? Another one is at the beginning of every meeting, asking what's your energy today? 0 to 5. 5 is it's great. 0 is it's really sucks. Yep. And let everybody go around. So at least when you as a leader, if somebody says I'm a 1 today, right, then you can follow up afterward, or so can the team.
Angel, who is our producer for all of e-commerce week and is, the woman behind the curtain currently, has been doing every Monday an icebreaker for our entire internal marketing team, where it's like if you could ask your dog. The last one I remember was, if you could ask your dog one question, what would it be? Like fun things that just like, let's start the week off with something a little more fun and get to know each other on a different level, and then get into work. It's been great. All right, so questions rolling in. The first one is, for a solopreneur, how do I stay motivated if I don't have a team to rely on? Any tips on how to co-create with others?
Well, just what I said earlier, right? I mean, you might go back and get my first book, Never Eat Alone, which is all about that was the book that guided me to build my relationship in the first place with Peter Diamandis, right? And by the way, can the community talk to each other in some Zoom room right now? Is there a chat room where they can see each other's stuff?
Yep.
Okay, well, great. So for those of you who are watching, put yourself out there. Hey, so-and-so calling from, Santa Monica, what business are y'all in? You could be having an entire dialogue in chat with people who share your interest because they're here. You can be networking. You can be building those relationships, right? I know, what are you smiling about? Just other questions coming in?
I'm sending a here in to get everyone in the channel. We built a channel for your talk, so getting everyone going in Slack.
What is it? I'll participate. What's it in?
There's a link in, Angel, if you want to throw the link in chat, you can jump.
Yeah, throw it in my chat, because I can only see the panelist chat.
Yeah.
Let me take a look at it. But yeah, so the whole point is you should be networking and you should be building those relationships. I'm using this time to team out and build deeper relationships with people that I didn't. And like I said, I've got 2 new businesses that I just started. I started an info products business, and I started a middle market business. Lead gen has never been my concern in the past. Lead gen for me was C-suite of the Fortune 500. And so that was a whole different play. Now I'm squarely in the middle of middle market lead gen and info products lead gen, just trying to build those relationships with folks in order to be, to advance my business. So I think there's a lot of people, particularly people who are watching this. If you're in e-commerce week, you've got a very significant skill set that a lot of people need right now.
Yep.
Because everybody's moving in this direction. And I'll give you for instance, this is a piece of advice I've given a lot of people who are unemployed right now, which is, you've got more time in your hands than other people do who are very busy and you admire. Reach out to them and offer them that you're going to give them something free. You'll give them 10 hours of your time to research something. You'll give them an assessment of their social media. You'll give them whatever, right? Offer to be of service.
It's such good advice, because that's exactly what we did when COVID hit. We did have a dip. We did lose clients. We had gym clients and et cetera. We took the people that had more bandwidth and said, we're going to go do free advising, free work for people that need it, and do some extra work for our existing clients just to give that back, so that again, when things get better, it gets better.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a Slack link, by the way, for you. So next question, as a leader yourself, how do you overcome doubt?
Huh. I think for me, the way I overcome doubt is that my radical insecurity and fear of failure overcomes my doubt. What I mean by that is you're never going to overcome your doubt. You know, we're entrepreneurs. We have this natural mode of being constantly on the move, constantly trying to survive and thrive in this very challenging world that all of a sudden got more challenging for many of us. You can't effing stop. You just can't. Yep. And, you know, for me, I got lots of doubt, but I also have a lot of fear of failure that is stronger than my doubt, which could stop me from action. So I just stay active. Now, the other thing I do is, again, it's my posse. It's my posse. I'm constantly checking in. If you have doubt, be vulnerable and share it with your friends. Make sure you have friends that you respect and admire, and those individuals need to be your sounding board. And you use that platform to bounce those ideas off of, and that doubt off of. And you'll find out whether or not you have right to be doubtful. And maybe you don't know.
I don't know that it's kind of like fear. Like sometimes it can be a good coach as well, where, you know, exactly. Having doubt, it's okay to doubt. It's okay to doubt and question what you're doing. It's just, you know, don't irrationally doubt. Like the whole imposter syndrome, almost every entrepreneur feels at some point, like that you got to get over. But I like this question a lot. What's one way a team member, not a team leader, can ignite this energy in their team?
So that's why I wrote the book Leading Without Authority. I wrote it for team members, right? And I wrote it for team leaders to give it to team members. And the principle is that, I mean, I take you back to the day when I was a kid at Deloitte. So I was a 20-some-year-old intern at Deloitte. And I heard the CEO say that he wanted someday the brand of Deloitte to be at par with McKinsey and Accenture. At the time it was called Anderson. And I absorbed that, and I went out and I did a research project on what best practices were in professional services marketing, what Accenture was doing, what McKinsey was doing, what all these people were doing. And I packaged it up and I sent it to the CEO, right? And here I was right there as a kid, and, you know, the CEO was blown away, but I led without authority. I reached out, I created a plan. I said, here's something you might think about. And then he said, hey, why don't you come in and keep going on this project? Ultimately, I became the chief marketing officer of all of Deloitte before I was 30. So anybody can, you as a leader need to be enticing your team to really step up. And you, if you're not the leader, you personally need to be, leading has nothing to do with who reports to you. It's who you can engage to create something extraordinary with.
Yep.
And that's why I wrote the book.
No, that is great advice. We try to encourage our people to do the same, and we also try to receive it the best we can. I think it's always a work in progress on all sides, but yeah, it's the, you know, stepping up and taking that authority, and not leading with authority, but at the same time, if you are a team member, feeling confident enough to step up and make those suggestions, you're 9 times out of 10 going to be hyper valued by the people that you want to be valued by the leadership in the company. You're not going to threaten. That's not that common that someone would feel threatened by that. And if they are going to feel threatened, you're probably under the wrong manager anyways, and it's going to be short-lived anyways. So
yeah, or you can coach your manager.
Correct.
I mean, I worked with plenty of insecure managers who I helped them, you know, and I talk about this a lot in earning the right to lead. How do you get a leader to relinquish control of you? They've got to know that you've got their back. They've got to know that your job is, in your mind, you're just trying to kick butt to make them successful. You will get a lot of latitude if that leader feels that you're deeply invested in their success.
100%. And it's more fun. I mean, we talk about it here where it's like, create the environment you want, make it an enjoyable place to work. Like, what do you want to be working on that makes sense for the company mission? And as long as it's aligned there, you know, just like you heard the mission from the CEO of Deloitte and went, wait, no, I have some ideas of how to achieve that alignment, you're going to get a lot of support from people on the company. That's great.
Yeah. Which means you got to put it out there and then invite your people in. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So let's see. Next is you mentioned disruptive marketing, but how do you approach that disruptive strategy now when everything is disruptive? So how do you create a disruptive marketing strategy when everything's being disrupted is what I think this is.
I'm not I have some ideas and I've been working on it, right? But for myself, but I'm probably not the one to ask. That's why I was bold and said to this team of people listening, you tell me what I need to do to sell into the middle market, right? You tell me what I need to do to do extraordinary content marketing strategies. You tell me, and I think that if you're over here in your chat room, you just say to people, I'm interested in this subject. Who wants to join me on a conversation about how we're serving our clients in these areas? Don't think about competition. Think about abundance. Think about thought leadership. I want you to become a thought leader. I know I've been having sessions with Stanley McChrystal, General McChrystal, and others that are in exactly the same space, serving exactly the same clients, doing very similar work around team effectiveness. And here I am reaching out to other people might think of them as competitors. Damn, what's a competitor? This world is so damn disruptive. You need allies, and you need to find the smartest allies possible and go create great things together.
Yep, totally agree. So Ellen from the Slack channel has a question, which it starts with, I find it super admirable that you have become even more entrepreneurial in the face of the pandemic. For those micro businesses you have started in the last few months, how did you do the fuzzy vision pre-step? If X equals 0, how do you 10X? Especially now where there isn't a ton of relevant historical info. Good question.
Look, I mean, it wasn't that difficult for me to sniff out and say, if the Fortune 500 closed its pocketbook, and where are you going to go next?
Yep.
So you start looking at markets, right? And so there were two markets for me. One market was, companies of 10 to 20 million to 100 to 200 million, that sort of. And I was looking at this and I was saying, who has money? Who has money? And I know that there are a few folks at the top. There are 5 or 6 of them that do. Amazon does, Zoom does, right? Fine. So I can keep my marketing strategy aimed at those big folks that have money. But then my point was, in that smaller to middle-sized market, I could either do my segmentation or I could find places like the YPO organization, right? The YPO organization serves people in that segment. Now my question is, how do I serve YPO so that I can gain exposure to a pre-existing marketplace, right? And so what I'd start looking for you is I would just start looking at segments. I'd go back from the buyer, figure out who the segments are. One of the big mistakes I made from March till now is in my work, we did not do the really great avatar work early on. So I went out and hired somebody to run online marketing for me, right? And that person had not really known my avatar. And that person was a hard ass worker, but that individual wasn't attuned to the marketplace. And unfortunately, what that person didn't do well, that person was afraid to say they didn't know and didn't spend enough time crying for help. And one of the things that I want all of you to do when you're doing this is, that's why I highly suggest you use the agile process. Every 2 weeks, you should be looking at your movement in the direction of this new strategy and saying, what's working, what's not working? How do we have to adjust? What do we do differently? And if you don't do that, you're going to end up what I did, which I frankly did it poorly. I wasn't using agile in that particular part of my business. And I woke up, $100,000 in the hole, and 4 months had gone by. Okay, well, you pivot, right? And so you pivot and you move forward. And that's what we entrepreneurs do. But, my high recommendation is use the advice I gave you that I didn't take myself.
Well, Keith, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you can hang out for a little bit in Slack, and I'll hand it off to you, Tony.